The word IoTA has two distinct meanings. As a noun, 1. A tiny or scarcely detectable amount. 2. The ninth letter of the Greek alphabet.
Welcome to IoTA for Thursday, August 4th, 2016. I'm Tony Lynn. IoTA is a daily news podcast focused on the Internet of Things industry. This is where we talk about all the really cool stuff that's going on. Hopefully less than just consumer grade goods. We really want to focus on the whole industry as a whole. That's redundant. But specifically in the U.S. and Atlanta. Atlanta's my home. That's where we kind of focus things. But we get a lot of international news as well. So without further ado, let's get to the stories of the day. Mike Vizard of IT Business Edge reports that Particle has created Particle Cloud, which makes it possible to create proof of concept IoT projects to test deployments before a major rollout. Particle also has a hardware development kit to help developers prototype devices and deployments. They've already shipped over 120 dev kits. The interesting part here is that they're really trying to eliminate the uncertainties of a deployment. We've talked briefly about this before, but a deployment is a big thing. So not only do you have to have an investment in the hardware and the software to run that hardware, but then to deploy it out on a large scale, it's very expensive, or it can be very expensive, and you really need to make sure you've got that right. And so Particle Cloud at least give you some opportunities to maybe proof that out before you have to spend all that money. eWeek reports there are 5 technologies needed before you can build an IoT application. Daryl Taft writes that you'll need a computation. Examples include Spark, Impala, or Storm, a database such as Riak, Cassandra, MongoDB, a queuing system such as RabbitMQ or Kafka, an application framework such as Akka or Spring, and a resource manager operating environment such as Mesos. While he lists these 5 things for an IoT application, I think he's only scratched the surface. In fact, if I was to look at that list, the gentleman who actually submitted this to me, I mentioned to him, is like, well, there's a whole lot more opportunities than just that. For every one of these slices that Mr. Taft is referring to, there's probably a dozen or 2 dozen, or in some cases, more choices that could go into something like this. So again, there's plenty of opportunity. Remember, we're at the very beginning of this. We're in the wild, wild west, and until developers start to pick and choose, and until manufacturers start to sort of pick and choose as well, we won't reach a convergence for many years to come. If you look back at some of the Gartner reports and others where they're talking about by 2020 that this is going to be something like 4 to 5 times as many IoT devices as mobile devices. By that time, we'll start to see a little bit of convergence, and it will have to happen, because otherwise we're in the same boat that the Android was in, is that there's just too many variants, too many variables, too many variations of the software in order to make it, I guess, cost effective is the word I'm looking for. Thanks to Bobby John of Band of Coders here in Atlanta for providing that story. He was kind enough to send that one along. He was all excited. So moving right along, Beth Stack-Poll of Tech Target reports that the gas and oil industry is heating up. While this industry has long been a proponent for remote monitoring and sensing, the calls for widespread deployment was a hindrance. The oil industry as a whole has always had some ability to at least monitor their oil wells or whatever. The problem was it was taking literally custom solutions to go in, and there were millions and millions of dollars worth of high-tech type sensing, but it was very sort of limited in scope and very hard to deploy. In comes WellAware, which brings real-time monitoring of production assets in a cost-effective manner. This is in part spurred because of the lower gas prices, meaning lower margins, and thus a need to eliminate the inefficiencies to maximize their profits. WellAware has created an agreement with OnRamp Wireless to build a wide area network specific to the IoT needs of the oil industry, and they're going to connect all the gas fields in the U.S. together. So effectively, you're going to have a giant wireless gas network specifically for their IoT needs. Now, I'm curious if they do that, if there's an ability for them to possibly open that up. So if you think about the oil wells in the U.S., they tend to be either congregated around the coastlines, mostly out in the ocean itself. and or scattered throughout the U.S. There's certainly oil wells everywhere, but I'm really more concerned about say the Gulf of Mexico. That if they can create a network specifically to their needs, now does that give boaters and or other commercial applications or commercial fleets the ability to actually interface with that, particularly while they're in the ocean? And could that possibly lead to, say, better sensing of weather patterns and such? I think there's an opportunity here that maybe they're not considering just yet, but perhaps somebody will. Moving along, Cambridge News, Matthew Gooding reports that there's a new home monitoring system launched by Amino. Amino specializes in internet TV devices and cloud solutions currently, and they've just added their home monitoring solution that's designed specifically for network operators. And by network operators, I mean carriers or someone else. So they designed this thing to be a white box, then relabeled and sold through someone else. So it includes a self-installable Wi-Fi camera that can broadcast live to your smart device. And it's designed to be rebranded by the network operator, including all the management tools, the setup, and the web and mobile apps. So they basically created an ability for, let's say, Comcast to now sell you a home automation system and go for it. Now, what I don't know is this available in the US currently? I was unable to find that through the links that were provided on this, and this is a UK company. But the good news is this sort of system will more than likely come to the US if it's not here already. I was listening to a podcast yesterday, and it was talking a little bit, not about home automation, but it was talking about the smart locks that may exist and how manufacturers are currently a little bit gun shy of actually having the ability to unlock these smart locks, because if the smart locks can be unlocked, and considering how poor our security currently is for IoT devices, now this makes it where a hacker is just going to unlock your house. And so they're really concerned about that. So they have it where you can lock things remotely, but not necessarily unlock. And they've got to solve some of these problems going forward. Now, since we're talking about cameras, I did do a pick a day. All about circuits. They have a very neat breakdown today where they're looking at the Ingenious EDS 1130 camera. And what they've done is that they step by step, they've basically taken it apart, shown every section of it, talked about the circuits that are in there, talked about the chips, talked about the camera. And so if you want to go take a good look at what that might look like, I remember as a kid that every electronic device I had, I would eventually take the screws out and look inside to see what it was. Unfortunately, it never quite went back together with the same amount of screws as I took it apart with. Imagine that. But if you're interested in that, that's a very cool way to just kind of take a look and see what's going on. As always, all this is in our show notes. Feel free to go to show notes. Again, thank you to Bobby John for providing some feedback, some story ideas, which is we really would like for more of that to happen from you guys. I know you see as much on this as I do. I'm just reporting it to you. So please send me any sort of feedback to my email address, and we'll get to that in a second. If you like what we're doing and you think that we should do more, feel free to support us. Any help, any support is very helpful. As always, you can go to patreon.com/Tunamuck to find out how you can support me. And my email address is tunamuck@gmail.com. You can find me at Tunamuck on Twitter, or any of my projects at www.tunamuck.com. As always, we'll see you tomorrow.